Welcome to New York's #2 sports show. The Yankees lose 2 of 3 to the Athletics at Yankee Stadium. Their offense does absolutely nothing, getting one hit in the rubber match, led by Jeffrey Springs, the former Ray, now Athletic. And in the last 17 innings in this series, the Yankees only get 2 hits, and they went about 12 innings of getting no hit. One out in the fourth uh, was the last time they had gotten a hit in game 2, and then all the way until a Ben Rice single with one out in the 7th of game 3. So the lineup has been pretty putrid through 12 games. Now, fairly small sample size. The weather is colder, obviously, than it will be over the course of the season. But really, you only, in terms of the regular players, there's really only 2 that you look at and say, okay, they have, done, either at or above offensive expectation. And that would be Ben Rice and Giancarlo Stanton. Now, Amed Rosario, who we'll talk about, he's done well, but again, like, obviously he hasn't played that much. And I can't even include a guy like Paul Goldschmidt, who really hasn't played much at all. And he has probably been a bit underutilized for my liking, even though I agree with the fact that Goldschmidt, shouldn't have had the role that he had last year, right? He struggled a lot against righties, so it makes sense that you want to go. And Ben Rice has been one of your best guys, right? So you're in a bit of a conundrum. But I think Paul Goldschmidt certainly should be used more than he has been. I think we will see him a lot moving forward with the Yankees facing a string of left-handed starters. But even in this last game against Jeffrey Springs as a lefty, Goldschmidt didn't start and didn't come in off the bench either. So you're dealing with a lot of Yankee hitters that are just giving you next to nothing, right? There's bad, and there's even, it's even worse than that for a lot of these guys, where it's, batting averages, well below 200, OPSs in the 500s, some worse than that. So look, you don't want to overreact, but it was not good. The Yankees started out 7-1. They go 1-3 in their last 4 against, not great teams. Now the Marlins have, had gotten off to a nice start, but you won that series 2 out of 3. And like I said, that was acceptable. In this one against an Athletic team that I think when push comes to shove is not going to be a team that you're going to see, being in playoff competition and being in the mix. Just not a good result. And quite frankly, they could have gotten swept if not for Amed Rosario heroics in game 1. And thanks to an old friend, Mark Leiter Jr., who was just awful in the bottom of the 8th inning. The Yankees could have lost all of these games. And I guess staying on that front, the player of the series is Amed Rosario, who I think he's someone that right now, look, he started all 3 games in the series. He should be someone that plays more than 50% of the time at this point. Rosario, he's someone that he's going to start against lefties all the time, but I think against righties, at a bare minimum against righties, I think it should be a 50-50, right? And so you add all that up, and he should be someone that I think is in the lineup a good amount. And, I'm not saying that what he's done, and it's, again, very small sample size, will continue, but when you're talking about a team that doesn't have many guys going, he is someone that right now is. And so I think that, the Yankees are going to try to get him in there. And it doesn't hurt, again, that the Yankees, just this coming up series with the Rays, you got a couple lefty starters. So that he's going to start at least 2 of the games. But he started over Ryan McMahon in game 1. I mean, his home runs were against righties, both of them. And that's encouraging. And the ironic thing is with Paul Goldschmidt, his 3-run homer against the Mariners against George Kirby, who's one of the better righties in the game. So sometimes I understand what the numbers say, and I know it's not always easy. In the case of Rosario, it is easy because, the guy who he's replacing for the most part, Ryan McMahon, has been absolutely horrible. And I also want to say, as far as there was 2 obvious candidates as far as the player of the series. It was Amed Rosario or Ryan Weathers. But I went with Rosario. What he did in game 1 led to a win. Unfortunately for Ryan Weathers, and it's not his fault. it did not lead to a win. They lost his game. So that was kind of the tiebreaker. But it was really the only two ones that I think were even in consideration, unless I'm forgetting something. But as far as the worst player of the series, and there were a lot of players to go around, but yet again, and I've already given it to him this, one time this season, it goes to Ryan McMahon. And um, I think that we're at a point now, and look, McMahon is someone that did a pretty nice job at shortstop this series, which you can't just throw away. With the struggles of Jose Caballero, McMahon started shortstop in game two and came in to play short, moved over from third to short in the third game. So he'll get a little bit of run there until Volpe gets back. But Ryan McMahon, and by the way, let me give the actual numbers for Rosario on the series, having been the player of the series. He ends up going 3 for 10, 2 homers, 4 RBIs, and those 2 homers and 4 RBIs happen all in game one, as well as a couple of walks for Rosario, who isn't much of a guy that, he doesn't get many walks. He did get 2 walks in game three. For Ryan McMahon, he goes 0 for 6. Again, he did not start, he came in for defense in game one. He started games two and three. He goes 0 for 6 with a walk and 3 strikeouts. And really, and there was a double play in the mix there as well for game two, and a strikeout to end game two, where he could have easily walked. It was 3-0. He takes his strike for, to make it 3-1. That's fine. And then he swings at one that was just off the plate on the 3-1, and then the full count was not even close. And you actually, at that point, did have Caballero off the bench as a definite pinch run option. So Ryan McMahon, I mean, it's ugly at this point. He is now batting 069 with a 319 OPS and a strikeout percentage that is hovering right around 40%. Just terrible. I mean, he's got 14 strikeouts in, 29 at bats. The plate appearances is obviously more than that. He's got 7 walks, for example, but really giving you next to nothing. And, you're looking for that elite defense. And look, defensively, he was fine this series, but, it doesn't even make up for just how bad he's been. And he's not alone. Look, that bottom of the lineup is very, very bad. And it kind of extends up to Trent Grisham as well. And look, not for nothing, but even guys like Judge and Bellinger aren't doing a whole lot. Like they've been okay. They've had their moments that they've contributed, but like it's bad. And as far as Grisham goes, I don't have a whole lot of faith in Randall Grichuk, and I know it's tough. He has not played much, so to ask him to all of a sudden go in there when you don't play for a week, look, that's not easy. But he goes 0 for 3 with 3 strikeouts in game three. And again, I have a hunch that Randall Grichuk just may not really be much of an answer as far as that, guy that you hope can be someone against lefties, but we'll see. I think when all is said and done, this lineup, it's going to hit its home runs, but I don't know. The strikeouts are going to continue to be there. They're still very lefty heavy. And I think that if they do make the postseason, which is way down the line, we're not even close to that. I don't know. This mix, I don't see getting them over the top. I really would like to believe that there are changes made somehow by the deadline. I don't, and it's not really an easy solution. Injuries can maybe change the dynamics a bit, right? Where somehow a Jason Dominguez is brought up, and because I think that everything being equal, again, I think despite his bad defense against righties, he's going to be one of your better hitters. I just think that's the case. So there's some internal options as well, but I leave this series definitely having some concerns with the lineup. I think the bottom of the order is really bad. And players that were good last year, I don't know if they're going to be good again this year. So we'll see what it brings, but it's early. And I think when the weather gets warmer, they'll do better. But hey, again, if you want to get to October, it's not as cold as it is in late March and April, but it can be cold, right? It's not going to be totally ideal temperatures. So it's something to think about there too. Um, but as far as this series goes, the A's were coming in 3-6. Yeah, they're not an upper echelon team at all. I guess I'm fair. I mean, some of their pitching, it's solid for sure. Like Jeffrey Springs, for example, the Yankees saw him a lot with the Rays. This is a good pitcher, no question, right? So credit is due there. Um, but at the same time, like Luis Severino in game two, that, they let him off the hook. He walked five guys in 5 innings. Like, that can't happen, right? Springs, I mean, to get one hit by Jeffrey Springs is that's bad, even if you want to say Jeffrey Springs is good, and he is. But the Severino game, that is a situation where the Yankees just could not get a big hit. They went 1 for 7 with runners in scoring position in game two. But let's go back to game one, and it was Cam Schlittler on the bump, and he was human in this game. He actually was not. He finally has given up a run. Has not given up a walk yet, which is impressive through 3 starts, but he does finally get clipped. He goes 5 innings, gives up 5 hits, 3 runs, no walks, 7 strikeouts. So he wasn't bad. And he ends up with a no decision. He was on the hook for the loss, but thanks to Amed Rosario, he ends up getting the no decision. For the A's, it was Aaron Savale, who we've mostly seen in the past with the Guardians. There's been some playoff battles. I mean, playoff battles there. The one that comes to mind for me was 2022. He started game 5 of the ALDS. But he goes 5 innings, allows 2 hits, 1 run, 4 walks, and 6 strikeouts. And yeah, kind of just this whole series, just a bit of a sleepy feel when the offense isn't going to be there and the weather was cold. It kind of has that feeling. It just sucks the Yankees weren't able to find a way to win 2 out of 3. But again, they could have been swept, right? So, and I also will say the Yankees this year, all 4 of their losses by 1 run. In games decided by 2 or more runs, 8-0. Games decided by 1 run, 0-4. So it just makes it sting. It shows you that the Yankees starting pitching is going to keep them in game. Like that is a big time strength, especially if Ryan Weathers is going to do what he did or anywhere close to it in game 3. That's a good thing. But as far as this one goes, and it was your regular lineup except Rosario and for McMahon. And I think that was due to the fact that Ryan McMahon has struggled to start the year. And that was a button pushed by Boone that worked because Amed Rosario was the big reason why the Yankees won this game. There's no doubt. As far as ABS is concerned, not so good again. Not very good in game 1, not very good in game 3. They end up running out of to be fair in this one, they ran out of challenges late. Austin Wells, who at the start was very good as far as on the defensive catching side of things, even there it had its struggles, and at the plate it's just not been good. He lost the challenge. Jess Chisholm, who I'm very skeptical of as far as ABS, he lost one late. Game 2 was fine, and then game 3 lost challenges by Caballero and Bellinger. So where the Yankees got up to a nice start in those first couple series, really they came home and wasn't very impressed by what they did there. And, that's a big part of the game, just is. Although on the flip side, the A's weren't really great either. So it wasn't like the Marlins, who I thought stood out, where they just seemed like they were winning challenge after challenge. Not so much with the A's. Anyway, the Yankees actually do jump out to the early lead, and it's Amed Rosario hitting his first home run. And he only hit 1 home run last year, when he was acquired from the Nationals. And for Rosario, I believe as a Yankee, I know he's homered at Yankee Stadium as a Met, but as a Yankee, I believe this was his first Yankee Stadium home run. I believe last year when he homered, that one homer was on the road, if memory serves. So Amed Rosario homers off of Savale to give the Yankees 1-0 lead. But the third inning is where Schlittler runs into his trouble. He gives up 3 runs in the third. A very lucky Max Muncy, not Dodger Max Muncy. This is a different Max Muncy. He gets an infield single. Then Jeff McNeil, the former Met, who really was a thorn on the Yankee side this series and kind of has been, I feel like, in the Subway Series. Last year, had a huge home run off of Luke Weaver, who is now a Met, ironically. But a hit for McNeil, sack bunt Denzel Clark, and then a 2-run double for Nick Kurtz. And then with 2 out, an RBI double for Tyler Soderstrom. So a couple of rare hard hit balls against Cam Schlittler, but give him some credit in the fact that he didn't unravel. Like that was the 3-run inning, wasn't good. Little bit of unluckiness in terms of that first hit by Muncy, but he was hit hard, right? No question about it. But he is able to settle down. Wells loses that challenge in the 4th, by the way. And in the 5th, there was an opportunity. Jose Caballero, who we've talked about, has not looked very good this year. He does get a leadoff double, and there's a 1-out walk by Judge, but then Bellinger grounds out and Rice flies out. So there goes an opportunity there. Jake Bird comes in the 6th, gets a couple of outs after giving up a single. Brent Hedrick, who's done a very solid job this year for the Yanks, comes in and is able to kind of tightrope out of the inning. It ended up actually being, I believe, a second and third. When all was said and done, it was second and third, 2-out, but he struck out Max Muncy to keep it where it was. Fernando Cruz, Hedrick gets a couple of outs in the 7th. Cruz finishes up the 7th. Austin Wells gets a leadoff double in the bottom of the 7th, but nothing comes of it. Caballero, Grisham, and Judge all ground out. The 8th inning was Fernando Cruz, and again, Fernando Cruz has done a nice job this year. So, Hedrick is not allowed an earned run, and has I think earned a spot in this bullpen. And Fernando Cruz, who the problem with him, and there was a couple of walks in this game. Cruz actually ends up getting the win. That's his biggest issue. If Cruz could somehow limit the walks, he'd be that much more dangerous. But he's his own worst enemy sometimes. But it's Mark Leiter Jr., who, of course, was with the Yankees, acquired in 2024 at the deadline, and was someone that, he basically was not great last season with the Yankees, but, was on one of the playoff rosters, was off one of them as well, and ends up, Yankees don't bring him back. Non-tender him, and the A's pick him up. It's a good thing they did for the Yankees' sake, as in the 8th inning, it is Bellinger singling, Rice with a single, and then Giancarlo Stanton it's almost like he hit it twice. It was only Stanton could do this, where it just takes a weird turn on Jacob Wilson, the shortstop, and it's an RBI single to make it 3-2. Jazz Chisholm flies out, and look, Jazz is really one of the worst guys. I'm telling you, runners in scoring position, Jazz is one of the last guys you want up there. But it's Amed Rosario, who already homered earlier against the righty, hits a 3-run shot to give the Yankees a 5-3 lead. And good for them. I mean, it sounds crazy to even consider it, but the fact that they didn't go to like McMahon, for example, they stuck with Rosario. And look, it makes sense. Mark Leiter Jr., anyway, look, they would have either gone to a lefty, or Mark Leiter Jr. is a reverseless guy anyway, so it wasn't even really much of a consideration. So there's not much credit to be given. But Rosario, no doubt about it, only if it was fair or foul was the question. 3-run homer for Rosario, second homer of the night. Yankees take a 5-3 lead. And David Bednar, who we'll talk about again for game 2, in game 1, he gets the job done. 1-2-3 inning, gets his 5th save. Yankees win. It wasn't pretty, but they win 5-3. Game 2 starts out really good. I mean, it looked as if they were on their way to, maybe winning the second game of the series. The first inning, they score a couple of runs, and it was, against Luis Severino, who the Yankees pummeled last year. Severino goes 5 innings, 4 hits, 2 runs, 5 walks, and 7 strikeouts. For him to go 5 innings, 2 runs is a shame, considering the amount of runners that were on base against him. And for Will Warren, he doesn't go deep into the game, which is, problematic. Will Warren, it's been a little bit of a mixed bag for him to start. He hasn't been horrible. He's kept them in all 3 games, did a nice job in the home opener, but, that first San Francisco game was kind of like this game. And you want a little bit more from Will Warren, but he goes 4 2/3 innings, 5 hits, 2 runs, 3 walks, 5 strikeouts. This is where JC Escarra starts, and Escarra has in limited opportunity has not done very well. Rosario gets to start at third again, and McMahon moves over to short. But the first inning was good for the Yankees. Grisham single, Judge single, RBI single, Bellinger. And then you get a couple of strikeouts to Rice and Stanton, Chisholm Jr. with the walk, and then Escarra gets a bases loaded walk to make it 2-0, but Rosario strikes out to end the threat. So 2-0 Yanks there, and then the bats go pretty quiet. They really, really do. Matt Blake was actually ejected in the third. So clearly he was not thrilled with the strike zone, that Will Warren was dealing with. But in the fourth is a 2-out rally by the A's. Lawrence Butler with a single, Max Muncy with a single, and then Jeff McNeil with an RBI single, a walk for Carlos Cortez, and then with 2 strikes on Nick Kurtz, a wild pitch by Will Warren. Now, this is one that I'm not saying it was easy, but I wish that JC Escarra could have maybe kept in front of him. If you're not going to hit, and I know that there is, like, look, Escarra, just the stats speak for itself. I know in spring he's done well. I know in the minors he's done well. Like, I last year I liked the walk to strikeout ratio. I felt like there was more there, but just the results are what they are. And I just feel like I know he's, he's deemed a good framer and things like that, but I want to see don't want to see that there. But again, I'm not saying it was easy either. It's ruled a wild pitch. It ties the game up at 2, and then Warren strikes out Kurtz. You get a hit by Rosario to make it first and second, one on the fourth, and then McMahon double play. So there you go again for McMahon. When he's not striking out, it's double play. And that was the last hit that we would see all game for the Yankees, and not until the 7th inning of game 3. So Tim Hill finishes out the 5th inning. He's been fantastic this season, and he also pitches through the 6th. A nice catch by Jazz Chisholm on Nick Kurtz to end that inning. Camilo Doval with a nice 7th inning there. And then in the bottom of the 7th, a little bit of a 2-out rally off of lefty Hogan Harris. A Grisham walk, a Judge walk, but Cody Bellinger strikes out. So there was an opportunity there. Brent Hedrick comes on to pitch a scoreless 8th. And then the top of the 9th goes to David Bednar. And for Bednar, it's been a thrill a minute this year. And it doesn't go well for Bednar. Leadoff single for Kurtz, double for Langoliers. He does get Soderstrom to strike out, but against Brett Rooker, unfortunately, he hangs a 1-0 curveball, and that's just easy sac fly territory for Rooker. Good piece of hitting by him, but if you're Bednar in that situation, you can't be elevating a pitch like that. And Rooker takes advantage for the sac fly to give him a 3-2 lead. That's the score going to the 9th. And then Joel Quinnell, I believe is how it's pronounced. He ends up getting the pretty easy save in the 9th inning. It's a committee situation seemingly for the A's in this post Mason Miller world for the Athletics. They traded him last year. He was their closer. Now, I think it's kind of just different guys, it seems like, and they could have went in a few different directions, and they did not do any pinch hitting. They stick with Escarra, Rosario, and McMahon. And, you technically did have Wells on the bench, as well as Goldschmidt being your most likely candidates, and Caballero as well. That was a little more unlikely, but you could have gone Wells for Escarra. I think they were mostly considering Wells for Rosario, which Rosario's been somewhat hot. So they're very, very righty-lefty focused. Too much so, I would say. All's to say, Escarra grounds out, Rosario grounds out, and then, like I said before, that Ryan McMahon strikeout to end the game where it's a 3-0 count, and he ends up swinging a ball 4 and 5 to end the game, and the Yankees lose 3-2. Game 3, great pitchers duel. Battle of lefties between Jeffrey Springs, who allows 1 hit in 7 innings, no runs, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts. He gets the win to go to 2-0. And Ryan Weathers, it's his first decision. It's a hard luck loss, 8 innings, 7 hits, 1 run, no walks, and 7 strikeouts for Weathers. And that was good to see, though. Look, I was down on him through 2 starts. I'm still skeptical, but when he's capable of, that's the fact that he was able to give them 8 innings, that was big. This bullpen's been taxed. And, there's really no off days for a while. So this was, if nothing else, great job by him to kind of reset the pen, before they go to the Trop and face the Rays. This was a lineup that surprisingly did not have Paul Goldschmidt in it, but it's tough because you want to keep Ben Rice in the lineup. And Ben Rice did get their 1 hit. So it's going to be situations where Giancarlo Stanton, there'll be times when he sits, but then when that happens, they might DH Judge. There will certainly be times when Rice doesn't play against lefties. Paul Goldschmidt's going to be the odd man out a lot, but I think that, for the most part, you're going to see him against lefties. It's too bad that, for example, like if Goldschmidt could somehow play a different position because you've had so many struggles, in the rest of the infield, right? Second, short, and third. But Goldschmidt's a first baseman, and that's where Rice is right now. And until they decide to have Rice play more catcher, right, because that is a solution you could have, this is the way it's going to be. And by the way, and it goes without saying, the key moment of game one was the Amed Rosario 3-run homer to give them the leadoff Mark Leiter Jr. The key moment of game two, of course, the sac fly by Brent Rooker. These key moments of these games kind of speak for themselves, with all games being very close. So Amed Rosario gets to start at second. Jazz Chisholm Jr. would come off the bench in this one. Randall Grichuk gets to start over Trent Grisham, and Cody Bellinger gets moved to center field. Um, but yeah, just basically this one was all pitching all the way. Not many chances for the Yankees. I mean, Aaron Judge had a first and second 2-out spot in the third and struck out looking again for Judge. It's been a slow start for him. He's at 222 with a 758 OPS. Very average numbers, and certainly those numbers will move up for Judge, but early going, not Judgian like just yet. But let's go to I already talked about the ABS, so no need to go back there. Let's go to the seventh. And Max Muncy gets the leadoff triple. Cody Bellinger was a little too aggressive on this one, where, you know, let's say Trent Grisham was over there. And I don't want to give Grisham praise. And the point is that Bellinger should have laid back a little bit on that one and just played it into a double. Instead, he was over aggressive, and Judge has to kind of get the carom. And it's an easy triple for Muncy. And then next batter, Tyler Soderstrom, your key moment of the game. Tyler Soderstrom, your only run, an RBI single, knocks Muncy in, 1-0 A's. Bottom of the seventh is an opportunity for the Yankees. A 1-out walk for Stanton, a single for Rice. Now, they kept Stanton in at that initial moment, and then they pinch ran Jazz Chisholm once Stanton got to second. I kind of understand being between a rock and a hard place. I don't think it was being asleep at the wheel, and it sucks that Stanton wasn't available later on, quite frankly. But you kind of had to pinch run for Stanton in that situation. Randall Grichuk does strike out. Again, he has not looked good in the very limited opportunities he's had. A double steal while Austin Wells was up. Chisholm goes to third. Rice goes to second. You could have pinch hit Goldschmidt. They would have brought in a righty, but the question is, would you rather have Wells versus Springs or Goldschmidt versus Alvarado? I'd probably rather have Goldschmidt. Austin Wells, who has not done much of anything this season, he's got no RBIs. He flies out to end the inning in Springs, and that was really your last big chance for the Yankees. Well, Weathers, like I said, he goes 8 innings. Very impressive. I mean, to go 8 innings, 7 hits, 1 run, no walks, 7 strikeouts is pretty good stuff. And in the 8th, there was a 2-out walk for Rosario. Judge grants that to end the inning. Top of the 9th, Paul Blackburn, the former A, comes on. And he's able to keep it at 1-0. In the bottom of the 9th, Hogan Harris, the lefty, gets Bellinger to pop out. He swung at ball 4. There was a pitch he fouled off that was clearly ball 4, which would have been very big to get that inning going. Not a good job by Bellinger. Chisholm Jr. flies out. Then Ben Rice strikes out to end the game. Yankees get shut out and 1 hit. Final score, 1-0 A's, and a very, very disappointing series loss for the Yanks. Their first series loss of the season. And now they head to Tampa to go to the Trop. And last year, the Rays played at George M. Steinbrenner Field, which, of course, is a Yankees minor league field and spring training field as well. And the Yankees had a lot of success there. The Trop has not been so friendly for the Yankees, so I'm not exactly looking forward to those games. And see, this is a series where losing 2 out of 3 is way more acceptable. It's a divisional matchup. It's the first divisional matchup of the season for the Yankees, so I'm not saying that it isn't more important per se than the A's series, but I'm just saying based on expectation. And when you look at, the pitching and stuff like that, that's a more understandable 2 out of 3 loss. Home against the A's, that just really can't happen. Like even at the A's, Sacramento's a weird things happen there. Like even there, you can kind of explain that one away a little bit. This one is probably going to go down as hopefully one of the worst series of the season for the Yanks. So Luis Gil is going to make his season debut. And the question is what's the roster spot that he takes? Now, Cade Winquist is the one that comes to mind initially. He hasn't even appeared in any games in the first 12 games of the season. But if you decide to basically, have him off the roster, then at that point, he would be headed back in all likelihood to the Cardinals because he was a Rule 5 guy. So the Yankees who, like to roster manipulate them, as much as they can, and they like to kind of use guys with options, they may choose to keep Winquist. Then at that point, your guess is as good as mine as far as who they'd send out, because every other person, whether it's right or wrong, does have a role in that pen. So to me, Winquist is my guess, and they just, kind of cut their losses there. But because of his unique situation, they may decide to go in a different direction. But I couldn't even tell you who it would be. But Heel is back. He'll be going against Steven Matz, the lefty, who's off to a 2-0 start. Then game two will be Max Fried against Nick Martinez, newly of the Rays. He's been mostly in the National League for a while, Martinez. And then game three will be a fun pitching matchup between Cam Schlittler and Shane McClanahan. So on the one hand, you have Fried and Schlittler, right? That's good. But look, it's going to be tough. I mean, especially McClanahan specifically. Yankees don't do well against lefty starters, and you had that with Matz and McClanahan. So this series could go either way. I think, if they can win 2 out of 3, that'd be great. But I wouldn't be shocked if they don't. And the Trop at times has been a house of horrors. And with the way things are going, I would expect a lot more low-scoring games. Maybe game one, Heel versus Matz, you get a little bit of offense. But I don't know. I think that by and large, you're looking at 3-2 type games, close games, and hopefully the Yankees can do better as they're in close games, as they're 0-4 in one-run games. So frustrating. Got off to a good start, but in some ways it was a little bit of smoke and mirrors. We had said the bottom of the lineup had not been doing well, and then you kind of add a few other players into that mix, and this is where you're at right now. So the Yankees sit at 8-4. They are first in the AL East, as the rest of the division has struggled. I mean, the Rays right now, they sit at 5-7, even though they were kind of predicted to finish last in division, but I never count them out. They're always pesky. So again, this will be the first AL East matchup of the season now in the 5th series. Yankees have won the first 3 series, but they fall to the A's. The first time the A's have won a series at Yankee Stadium since 2016. And now they will have a quick road trip, and they will head to Tropicana Field for the first time since 2024 for a 3-game set against the Rays.